Sarah A. Chrisman.
And I'm Gabriel Chrisman.
And today we're discussing a couple of classics, literally, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Now, it's impossible not to discuss these without also discussing some of the fragments that go with these. Mm-hmm. So, as we talk about the story, we're going to be talking about some things that aren't necessarily in either book, but are in various fragments of Greek legends that go with these. I took a classics course at university, and we've both done a lot of reading on these because it's cool stuff. I mean, this is the history of civilization. This to me also is the transition point between prehistory and history. Mm-hmm. And so in many ways, this is the birth of history. Right.
And the excavations that went on that proved the reality of the background to all of this are foundational to archaeology, to written history, to just about everything.
Yeah.
And I think is fascinating to go into.
Yeah. We should at some point do a talk on the spoof of all this archaeology that was the Motel of the Mysteries.
Yes.
We'll do that one at some point. But for now, let's stick with the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Yes.
So, as I'm sure everybody out there knows, Iliad is the Trojan War. Mm-hmm. The Odyssey is Odysseus going home from the war.
Yes.
And of these two, I prefer the Iliad.
And I prefer the Odyssey.
Right. So, I guess we should discuss why this is. I like the Iliad because, in the first place, the gods have a much more active role in this one. In the Odyssey, they kind of retreat to the background a little, but in the Iliad, they are fighting in the battles. You see Venus get wounded and taken back up to Mount Olympus while she's bleeding Iker and whining about it. You see Athena, spurring Achilles. It's the greats. It's the battles of the gods and literally the heroes. And you've got Hector and Achilles in here are literally superheroes.
Yeah.
These are the primordial superheroes on which all other superheroes are based. They're literally heroes. They are above mortals, but less than gods.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I just love that about it. Mm-hmm. Odysseus, who the Odyssey is about, he's not really a nice guy.
But he's very human.
He's just sneaky.
Well, he's also intelligent, and he wants to make his own decisions and judgments.
He's intelligent like a fox. He's
That's
way
not a
too
bad way
sneaky.
to be intelligent.
He's way too sneaky.
A lot of these guys are kind of dumb. They're dumb jocks, basically. And, I think that's a bit of a downfall to this one in terms of its level of interest.
But who gets the girl? The jock or the sneaky Weasley guy?
The sneaky Weasley guy gets back and gets the girl, too.
She's been alone for, 12 years or something?
I think it was longer.
But she's been on her own, sort of just been weaving.
Right.
Just, twiddling her thumbs.
Mm-hmm. But, to me, also, this one, if I can make a sort of analogy here to other literature, this one, to me, reads like Tolkien's The Silmarillion. It's not really a story.
The genealogies of all of the...
Yeah, this one just keeps on going on about everyone's background, and it's just way too long because of that, with a bunch of stuff that none of you need to know at this point.
You even get the backgrounds of the weapons and armor in some cases, which is very Tolkien-esque.
And literally the horses from time to time, I think.
And literally the horses sometimes.
Whereas this one is an actual adventure story. He's going somewhere. He's doing things and going places, and this all occurs in the front of one city. It's not a huge city.
It's focused. It's where all the action is.
And that's clearly why it's that thick, too, right? Because of all the action? No.
Well, it's not just one city. It's one city and the home of the gods. It's one city plus Mount Olympus.
I suppose. But again, the only people who are going back and forth there are they're basically gods. And so there's no description or difficulty to any of their travels or efforts. Again, I really like the human dimension of this.
Yeah, but all of Odysseus's troubles he brought them on himself.
What could be more human than that?
Athena was on his side. She was his patroness in the Iliad. And then she gets mad at him because in the fragmentary stories between these books, when they get into Troy, his men desecrate her temple. They literally rape Cassandra while Cassandra is clinging to the statue of Athena, begging for sanctuary.
Well, it's famously difficult to control soldiers during the whole sack after the battle, especially if they've been waiting outside the city for over a decade.
They were his men and therefore his responsibility. Therefore, it is his responsibility to be culpable for what they did. It was his job to keep them in check, and he didn't.
Right.
He was too busy throwing the baby from the battlements.
As you do.
Well, I believe the quote there is, "Only a fool kills the father and lets the son live."
It's prudent.
It's not nice.
It's not nice, but none of these guys were nice. Agamemnon wasn't nice.
Oh, Agamemnon was not a nice man.
Right, Achilles wasn't nice.
I like Achilles.
Ajax wasn't nice.
Ajax, you talk about you dumb jocks.
Exactly.
Ajax was the quintessential dumb jock.
Exactly.
Hector was nice. You cannot deny that Hector was a nice guy.
Perhaps to a fault.
Perhaps to a fault. Maybe that's why this ends with his funeral. But he was a very nice man.
By comparison, shall we say.
I think he was, even in isolation, Hector was a nice man. Can you point at a single thing Hector did which is not nice? A single thing Hector does that violates the rules of war.
No, nothing that violated the rules of war.
Right.
There is the classic scene where his son is scared of him.
Well, that's seen as a very domestic scene. And it wasn't because he was doing anything wrong, it was because he was wearing his war helmet, and the baby wasn't accustomed to seeing him in his war helmet.
Correct.
Yeah.
But, to me at least, that is also showing you that even this nice domestic guy has a warlike and scary side.
But as soon as he sees that the baby is scared, he takes his helmet off.
Right.
So he returns to that domestic
But when he
spirit.
goes back out to the battlefield,
You're not going to fight without your helmet.
Right. And so my point is that when he's fighting, he is not a nice guy.
I think he followed the rules of war, even when he was fighting.
I'd agree with that, and that's why he lost.
Well, he was definitely lawful good. You can't deny that he was lawful good.
I would agree with that much.
Whereas Odysseus is chaotic neutral.
Pretty much, yeah.
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 And Achilles, where would you put Achilles?
Mm,
Kind of chaotic good, I would say.
somewhere in there, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also just, again, to me, I would imagine that this was written...
The Odyssey, you're saying?
The Odyssey was composed later than the Iliad. I think the Iliad represents something closer to the real oral tradition of how this sort of information and history, as it was transmitted. And this starts edging much, much closer to a modern composition in terms of, to me, like this fits the whole idea of the first novel far better than Don Quixote does.
Well, this is much earlier than Don Quixote.
And that is why I think that it really comes closer to being the first novel.
Which one of these do you think had the greater influence on the civilized world? Because the Greeks had a tremendous influence on the history thereafter. They had a tremendous influence on the civilized world.
And to me, then, also, if you look at it as a piece of written material that survived, I think this, the Odyssey, has become much more the pattern for future writings since. I think that this, the Iliad, as representing that older oral tradition, that methodology, that whole structure has fallen out of use.
Because the Iliad focuses more on the gods, would you say that it tells us more about psychology and motivations?
Maybe to a certain extent. I think that is how the Greeks sort of approached the idea of psychology. I don't know that many modern audiences understand it that way.
I do definitely think that we see more of psychology with Achilles sulking in his tent and then, being driven into a blood rage than we do anywhere in the Odyssey.
Well, in this one, again, they're representing the gods and such are sort of taking the place of psychological impulses or character, things like that. In the Odyssey, what's going on is that the externalized events that are happening are externalized events in the real world that represent internal conflicts, potentially. And so you're moving from sort of mythology and spiritual explanations for things to sort of exaggerated physical analogies. But it's still a movement in a different direction. It's evolving from sort of a mythological consciousness towards, almost a humanistic consciousness.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Yeah. But I think they're both great books.
They are both excellent books, and if you haven't read them, absolutely read them.
If you haven't read them, you need to read them to fully enter Western civilization.
Yes.
If you haven't read these, I hope you at least have the justification of not living in the Western world. Right. I hope that you're somewhere, elsewhere, because anyone in the Western world should have read these.
Absolutely.
Just as part of being an educated person. And even if you're not in the Western world, this will help you understand Westerners a lot better.
Now, where do you come down on the debate about the author of these?
Homer?
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many guesses as to who Homer was. The one thing we do know about him was that he was blind. But in terms of anything else about him, I have even heard such wild-flung theories as the idea that Homer was a woman, which the justification that was given for that one was that the bathing scene in the Odyssey was so detailed it had to have been written by a woman. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that men take baths too, occasionally. And I think that certainly the battle scenes in the Iliad were definitely written by a man.
Yeah. But do you think these were both effectively written by the same individual?
I think they were.
Yeah.
I think they were.
Because the most sort of convincing stuff I've heard about this is that Homer, while Homer may have been a real figure and a very famous sort of oral tradition, almost like a bard, who would recite all of these things and definitely help solidify them. I don't know if that's the only person who had input into solidifying these into written form.
Here's my take on it. My take on it is that there was a very early bard who, for the sake of argument, we'll call Homer, who got the ball rolling on these stories. That the stories had been around, that the historical events of the Trojan War were in public consciousness, and there were a few different bards who sang about them and presented them and told the story, and Homer was a particularly successful one.
Right.
And then his version of things was written down, and then I think other later writers and later bards reinterpreted his version of it and expanded and built on the foundation he had laid.
So I agree with you on that. I do think that these went through many hands and mouths in this case.
And a few of those might have been women, for all we know. And so that might be why some people read these and say Homer must have been a woman, because there were a few women involved in the whole process. I would absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
There were a lot of highly educated Greek women.
Yeah. And I think that there is... I think it's good to understand also that these, as our sort of very first glimpse into written history, I think that these probably went through a few generations of oral transmission before they were written down.
Absolutely.
And so I think that that definitely explains the structure of the Iliad and the repetitious system that it sort of follows. And I think that the fact that the Odyssey doesn't as much fall into that makes me believe this was a later composition. And so but I do think it must have been spread across multiple generations, and therefore, Homer as a stand-in and was potentially a real figure, but was someone involved in the early stages of coming up with these, and wasn't necessarily the final arbiter of the text we read today.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that. But definitely pivotal works.
Yes, absolutely.
And very important to understanding history of the West and the history of our civilization.
Absolutely.
So, oops. Thank you for watching today. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a nice thumbs up. And remember to tell your friends about my books. Happy reading.